Well, good morning, friends. Welcome to another day of Almost Daily Meditations. Welcome to this Monday. We're in for some more warm March weather. Kind of fun to see everything starting to wake up. I know we are enjoying hearing our birds and other creatures early in the morning again, and we've had our first couple of crocuses pop up in our yard, so we've started to see some new spring growth. Yesterday, the readings were about the Ten Commandments and a little bit about Jesus turning the tables over in the temple. And one of the things that I'm reminded of when we're going through the season of Lent is that Lent is often a time when we develop habits. Meaning we might take on a new habit, like we want to start praying again, or we want to read our scriptures, or different things like that. And habits are kind of funny things. I grew up learning to be a musician, and one of the things that you do is you practice. And I was a trumpet player, and there's lots of things to learn about playing the trumpet. There's how you hold your lips, there's how you hold the horn, there's how hard you press the horn into your mouth. You're not supposed to. There's ways that you push your fingers down on the valves, certain positions, how you hold the horn, all that kind of stuff. And our teachers would always work on us developing really good habits. How do we get the right kind of patterns, different things like that. And so part of what you would do is you're learning scales, or scales are, da 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 da, and you would learn certain patterns to play. And the idea was you'd develop a muscle memory so that you would just sort of see a phrase, a musical phrase, or you'd see a pattern, and you would have that as a habit in your body. You wouldn't have to think about it. You wouldn't have to think, okay, press this valve, do that, do that, do that. It would become automatic. Now, maybe some of you are athletes, some of you do other things. Maybe you sew, maybe you knit. I think a lot of those things develop habits in our life where something is sort of automatic that you just do. And maybe something to think about as you're going through your journey is, what are your spiritual habits? Like what are your practices? How do you sort of go about that? I remember one of my good friends that I really used to really admire, I still admire. She was an incredible gift giver. So she would, and what was always kind of funny is she'd actually give, things that she was using or had, or maybe had used. It wasn't that she went and bought new things, but like she had all these children's books from when she was raising her kids, and then as she got to know new parents, she would find her favorite book that she used to read with her child who they're no longer reading, and then she would gift that to the person, and it would be sort of this precious gift. And I remember she died a couple of years ago, and I remember when people were gathering for her funeral, they would all talk about those little things that she did. It was almost a force of habit for her to be that. She didn't think about it. She didn't sit out and say, oh, I've got to do this so people will like me or something like that. She just was generous with her cards, with her gift giving, with, different things like that. And it created this depth of connection because she not only was giving them something for them to use that might be important, but she was offering something of value to her that was a good memory and sharing that with the person. And it was a way that she connected at a real depth with others. So maybe think about how, the habits you're developing or what you do. For instance, some of you have done the gratitude work with me before, where we do gratitude journals. And the whole idea of that is to get us thinking about what we're grateful for all the time in our life, to make that a spiritual habit. Practicing acts of kindness to those who are around us can be a spiritual habit. Acts of love or mercy can become a spiritual habit. I know one of the people in my church always carries with them a little kit, or actually multiple kits, that they can give a homeless person. That would be a little bit of food and some hygiene items and some socks and things like that. They always have a kit with them that if they run into somebody, they have something to offer for them to give them some sustenance and some peace and presence for the day. But a lot of these things are the habits that we have. The flip side of that is we can have habits that are not great, and habits that lead us in all kinds of just different directions. One of the things I use a program to get a photograph that I use for my quotes every day. and I put in the word habit. And the funny thing was, it didn't have anything like to do with positive things. It was all drug stuff. And I was like, well, that's really not the point. But there is this sort of, sometimes we have habits we don't want. And so there's also spiritual work to work our way out of those habits and out of those, not so great practices. Stephen Covey writes, our character is basically a composite of our habits. Because we are consistent, because they are consistent, often unconscious patterns, they constantly, daily express our character. And I think that's kind of the heart of what it means to get those good habits or those good practices. And so what are you going to do to get those good practices in your life, those good, solid spiritual practices that you need? Prayer, kindness, acts of mercy, charity, whatever it might be. I hope you have a great day. God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow.
The body of our Savior Jesus Christ torn for you. Eat and remember the wounds that heal, the death that brings us life, paid the price to make us one. So we share in this bread of life, and we drink of His sacrifice as a sign of the bonds of love around the table of the King. The blood that cleanses every stain of sin shed for you. Drink and remember, He drained death's cup that all may enter in to receive the life of God. So we share in this bread of life, and we drink of His sacrifice as a sign of our bonds of grace around the table of the King. And so with thankfulness and faith we rise to respond, and to remember our call to follow